So this is my wife's 2001 Ford Focus SE station wagon. We had some problems with recharging over the weekend, and I think there's something wrong with the alternator, so in this video we're going to catalogue my attempt to remove and hopefully replace the alternator on a 2001 Ford Focus. Problem number one. That's the alternator down there. It is not easy to get to in this car. You can see that it's behind a bunch of other hoses and pipes and wires, so let's take that challenge first. So I'm going to try and do this by just taking off one end of the fuel line. I don't want to take it off at this end. I'm going to try and take it off down here. You can see this little yellow quick release clip, so I'm just going to pop that clip and hopefully then move this over to the side behind the air filter intake, and that should be good enough to provide access to the alternator. So there we go. I've taken off the fuel line that was going on at this point, and we can still see the alternator buried back down there. Next, the next thing I have to deal with is this little cluster of electrical wires here. There is a quick connector here that should allow us to pop that off at least from that junction, and there's more of those connectors on opposite ends, so I think this whole thing is designed to pop off each of its connections and then fold the whole thing out of the way to provide access to the alternator. So in the course of popping off 2 out of 3 of these cables, I realised that the third one was connected down here underneath the power steering fluid reservoir, so that's going to have to come out too. Thankfully Ford in their infinite wisdom have just put little pop-off clips so you can actually just lift this thing up, pull it out of the way. Now we get a best view that we've had yet of the alternator, and you can also see where this last wire connector is that needs to come off. Alright, so here's all the wire connectors out of the way. The power steering fluid reservoir is shifted off to one side. Still got one more wire down there attached to the back of the alternator that's got to come off, but I'm starting to get a real bad feeling about this, because as far as I can tell this bracket's going to be in the way, and this part of the ducting is in the way as well, so I don't know why the people at Ford can't have just put the damn alternator on the front of the engine block instead of on the back of the engine block. It makes it so damn hard to get at. But I'm getting ready to call Uncle, or at least call my buddy Keith, to see if he can come over and help me, because at this point I don't even know where I'm going to get at the tensioner to ease up on this belt so that I can get the alternator out. And certainly this is the part where me not being a mechanic is really starting to hurt me. See, this is what you really need when it's time to do stuff like this. The cavalry. It's my buddy Keith. He's going to help us get medieval on this alternator. Alright, so with some advice from buddy Keith, we've taken the radiator reservoir off, and now we're in the process of undoing the bolts, posts that hold the alternator in place. So I'm going to keep doing that. So Keith's moved on to the undoing the back post. And it's not real easy to get at. In fact, we can't even see what we're doing, but it's back there somewhere. This could actually take a little while. So the posts are kind of long. It's not like your average bolt. It's actually pretty substantial. So this story just gets more and more complicated, because the one other attachment bolt you can see behind the oil filter there, but I'm now underneath the car. I've got it jacked up on stands, and we have to take that out with a 14mm socket. 13mm socket, I'm sorry. Keith is trying to pry the alternator off the mount. You can see it's not lined up with where the bolt goes in anymore, but boy, it's a bitch to get off. So we've got a little problem right now, which is we cannot get this post out. No matter what we do, there's not enough space against the body wall to get the thing out. So Keith's had a crazy idea, and we're going to undo the engine mount. Switch the engine over that way about 1/4 inch, just enough to get that post out, and then we should be good to go. But man, what a pain in the ass. Alright, so we just got the post off, and all it took was undoing the engine mounts, and then this digging stick, which we used to pry the engine from one side of the engine bay to the other, to give us a little space to get that thing out. And I just had my thumb over there the whole time. So the alternator is still kind of stuck on its mount.
So I think we have to spread that. So can you get underneath there and spread that with this?
That's what she said.
Put this in there and
Alright. Finally success. Once again we had to switch the engine over, disconnect a few bits and pieces, and to move a few things. We finally got the alternator. You can still see the alternator mount down here. This was where that troublesome post was going through that we couldn't get at. And here it is. A piece of crap that caused all the problem. If I didn't think I'd break my toe, I would drop kick this thing across the backyard. It helps to have good friends. $175 later, a new alternator. Let's just hope putting it back in is a little bit easier than taking it out.